Masechet Menaḥot, Daf Yod Aleph. Kamas ve'ala b'yado seror, or garger melach, or koret levona, pasul. The Mishnah taught that when the Kohen does the kemitzah, he has to have in his hand only the flour and oil mixture. If there's a stone that got mixed up in the flour and the mixture for some reason, and the stone is in his hand, it's no good because that's taking up space, it's taking up volume, and then he doesn't have the proper amount. Or if salt, there's some grains of salt that got mixed in there, and that's part of what's in his hand, or a piece of frankincense. No good. The only thing you can have is if it's for a sinner. For a Menaḥot, it would be just flour. For other ones, it would be flour and oil, either raw or mixed, depending on raw or cooked or baked or fried, depending on which type it is. It's already, if it's a type that would already be baked or cooked, then that happens beforehand. And so then he has to take pieces of it. It gets smashed up. If it's, let's say, fried, then it would get smashed up into little pieces, and he has to take the kemitzah from that. But it can be only that, and it can't have any of these other items. Kol hanela mali. Now we ask, why do you need all of these three different examples? Just tell me one, and I can figure out the other. The point is that you can't have any other stuff in it, because then it won't be a full measure. I need all three, because if it only taught me the pebble, I would say that's because the pebble doesn't get sacrificed. It's a foreign element, completely foreign. But salt eventually will get mixed with the komets, only with the komets itself, not with the remainder, and will be burnt on the mizbeach. So since the salt does have a role to play and will be part of the kemitzah that is burnt, so I would think maybe the salt is not taking away. It's not a foreign element, and therefore teaches us that it is, because the salt is only added after the komets and should not be added to the big bowl from which one takes the komets. Vitana melach dela ikeba behadeh mincha meikara she'eno molech ela komes bilbad aber lebonad ikeba behadeh mincha meikara emati tachshar kamashma lan. And if it said salt, well, the salt is not placed with the mincha from the beginning. It doesn't go in the big bowl, but rather you take the kemitzah and then you add the salt just to the kemitzah itself, because you don't put salt only on the komets. However, levona, which is placed with the mincha offering from the beginning. And so I might say that if I pick up the komets with some frankincense, the frankincense in fact is placed in the bowl with the flour, the big bowl with all the flour from which one does komets. But you have to make sure not to take any of that frankincense in the hand. They would take the frankincense, put it on the side, and then he would take the komets from the middle and make sure not to take any of the levona together with the komets. So that's why I need all three. Each one is a bigger chidush than the one before. The Mishnah went on and gave a reason and said, you know why you can't have any of these foreign elements in the komets? Because the halacha was taught that if the komets is lacking a measurement or is overflowing as too much, it's no good. Why does the Mishnah say the reason is because it would be lacking? In that case, if you have some salt or frankincense in there, that's taking up space that should be filled with flour. Why do you say that's the reason? Why not say it's because of an interposition? That, let's say he picks up a stone, and now the stone is somewhere between his hand, the skin of his fingers, and the flour. So now there's interposition between the flour and his fingers. So that would be also a problem. Why not say the problem is chatzitza? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah min asad. Yirmiyah explains that's when the stone or the salt is on the side. In other words, it'll be like right where the thumb is, all the way on the side. So it's not touching any skin. It's not interposing between any flour and any skin. It's just like you can see it right on the surface of the side or on the bottom side where the pinky is. So therefore, that would be a case where it's not an interposition, so there's no problem of chatzitza, but it still would be a problem that's taking up volume that has to be filled with flour. Amar le'Abaye l'Rava, kesad komsin. Abaye asked Rava, how exactly do you do the kemitzah? Amar le kid kamsi inashe. And Rava said, the way people take a handful. If you say in a recipe, take a handful of this spice, Okay, so everybody knows a handful. You just, you take all your fingers and you hold on to it, and that's a handful. Yitibe, zo zeret, zo kemisa, zo ama, zo etzba, zo gudal. However, the Abaye has a challenge from a baraita, because a baraita goes through all the 5 fingers and explains their relevance for halacha. So zeret is the little finger, and that is used to make for a measurement. The Torah mentions zeret orko, and the zeret is a span from the pinky all the way to the edge of the thumb is 1 zeret. So it's a good thing we have pinkies, otherwise we wouldn't know what a zeret is. And the next finger, what we call the ring finger, that's called the kemitza, because that's the edge of the kemitza, which means according to this baraita, you don't use the pinky when you're grabbing the komets, but rather you start from the 4th finger, the kemitza. And so this is a challenge against Rava, because when most people grab a handful, you use all your fingers, all 4 fingers, you grab onto it and maybe make a fist. But the kemitza, this says the 4th finger is where it starts and not the pinky. That's going to be the challenge. And then the middle finger is called an amma. That's because to measure an amma is from the tip of the elbow to the tip of the middle finger. So that's why we have a middle finger. And zo etzba, why is this called the etzba? Because that's used to sprinkle blood on the mizbeach. And the thumb, gudal, is used in a metzorah, when he has to become tahor, so the blood of the asham and the oil is placed on his right thumb. So you see the importance of each of the 5 fingers. The way we associate them and recognize their identity is their usefulness in various korbanot. Okay, so that's a challenge. So how can we explain this? This is the 4th finger is the kemitza, so it's not like a normal handful. No, what this means is that, yes, according to Rabbi, you take initially a handful, like you would normally do, but then you wipe away some of it. With the pinky, you use that to wipe away and level the amount that's within the 4th finger, and with the thumb, you use that to wipe away and level the amount that's in the 1st finger. Kilomar, kometz melo hayad, kede shelo yehe haser, ve'achar kach mochek be'espa ketana milimata. In other words, you take a handful, a full hand, so that it won't be missing. If you only take the 3 fingers to begin with, then as you're doing it, picking it up, some might fall out, and then you'll have a lacking measurement. So take as much as you can in the beginning, and then you wipe it off, and then it'll be nice and packed, and you'll have the full volume. Hechi abid. Let's explain further. How do we do this? Amar Rav Zutra bar Tovia Amar Rav, chofesh shalosh espeotav ad shemagia al pas yado vekometz. Rav says that one takes the 3 fingers, the 3 middle fingers, and bends them until it reaches over the palm of his hands. In other words, don't just do a very small pinch, that's only the top, but not so big that you can't touch the tips of your fingers to the bottom of your palm. So it has to be just right, just as much that it can touch the palm with the top tips of the middle 3 fingers. That's how big it is. This is what it would look like right here. So you have the 3 fingers, but according to Rava, you initially fill it up, and then you use the pinky to wipe away down here below, and the thumb to wipe away what's up here above. Tanana mehachi belo kumso yachol mevoras tamud omar bekumso. There's a baraita that supports that interpretation. It says melo kumso, which means a full hand. Well, so does that? If I had just melo kumso, that's in Vayikra 2:2, I would think even if it's overflowing, like really take a big clump that you couldn't even close your hand. Can that be true? No, it says be kumsa, and so be means inside. It has to fit inside a handful, so it can't be overflowing. But if I had only the word bikumso, maybe I would think it's just a tiny bit, just the tips of the fingers, whatever could fit in there, a small amount, because that's bikumso. Talmud omar melokumso, it has to be full, so as much as you could possibly fit, but still being able to close your fingers over your palm. How do you do it? You bend the 3 middle fingers over the palm, and that takes a handful. Now, when it comes to the pan offering or the deep pan offering, those are very difficult to do because they're cooked first and they're brittle. They're kind of hard. And so you make this like a pancake thing, and then you have to break it up into pieces. But then you have to take the komets from that, and then he has a komets. There's going to be pieces all sticking out from both ends, and then he has to take his thumb on top and his pinky, and he has to be able to wipe it completely smooth. So that's very difficult to do. You can't have pieces sticking out because it has to be level, but you can't wipe it off so that a whole piece falls out and then there'll be an empty space. And so therefore, this is a very difficult thing to do, to get it perfectly exact. And this is avodah kasha, the most difficult thing to do in the mikdash, as you needed like a lot of training, a special skill to do this. And we ask about that. V'zehu v'tula, really, this is the hardest thing to do? There's other things that are also very difficult. V'ika melika, v'ika hafina. Melika, pinching the bird's neck. You have to hold the bird in one hand like this over the top, and then with the same hand use the thumb to pinch into the back of the neck. This is very difficult to do. Also, chafina, that's what the Kohen Gadol does on Yom Kippurim. When he goes into the Kodesh Kodashim, he's holding the coals in one hand and the incense in the other hand, and then while holding both of those pans, he has to get the incense into his hands. So he has to put the handle under his arm and somehow turn it and can't drop any, and get the ketoret into his hands so that he can put it on the coals. That's very difficult. No, rather change it. Doesn't mean that the kemitzah is the hardest. It's one of the most difficult activities to do in the mikdash, but there are others that also are difficult to do. Amar Rav Papa, peshita li melokumso kid kamsi inashe. Ba'era Papa kamas berashe espeotav mai. Rav Papa is going to ask a series of questions. He says, it's obvious to me that when the Torah says that he fills up his handful, that the normal way people do that, that's the proper way. And what he means by that is vertically. If you have the bowl of flour here, and you would put your hand vertically down into the bowl, and then make a fist, and then pick it up. That would be the normal way. The question is, what if he does it berashes be'otav? That would mean like you're holding the hand horizontally and putting the fingers in and scooping it up like a scooper horizontally. Would that also be okay? Min hasidadin mai. Min hasidadim seems to me that he puts his hand backwards, his palm up, and he slides his hand so that the flour is going to go into his hand from over the sides as he slides it in, kind of like scooping it from the side. Mimata lema'la mai teko. Or if he just pushes his hand down, instead of the previous one was like scooping it up on the side or shimmying it down, here he just pushes it down, and then it ends up filling up from below up above. What about all those ways? And then he would close his hand. Mai teko. We leave all those questions unresolved. Amar Papa, peshita li melohofnav kedehanfi inashe. Now to the Kohen Gadol, who has to fill up both of his hands with the ketoret when he goes into Kodesh Kodashim on Yom Kippur. So he has to fill up, it says, his hand, melohofnav, his hands full. So the normal way to do that, it would be that you take both hands and you'd scoop it together and make like a cup, like as if you were drinking out of two hands. Now the question is, Ba'era Papa, Hafan berashes be'otav mahu. What if instead of doing like from the side normally, he would do it from the edges, from the tips of his fingers and dig into it? Mina sedadin mahu. Or if he would put his palms up and then again shimmy it down until he reached under it and lifted it up from there. Or chafan bezo v'keraban zo etzel zo mahu teko. Or if he took one handful with right hand and another handful with the left hand separately, and then afterwards he brought them together. What about that? All these questions are left standing. Now, after you do kimitza, you're supposed to put it into a second service vessel. The normal way would be that the vessel is regular, flat, and where he puts it in to the bottom. But what if instead of putting it onto the bottom of that service vessel, he sticks it to the side? It's dough. Usually, most of them are doughy if it's oil mixed with flour, and so you can stick it onto the side, the wall of the vessel. What about that? Is that okay? Does it have to just be in the inside the airspace of the vessel, and that it is in the airspace even though it's sticking on the wall? Or does it have to be resting properly as normal on the bottom of it? And then it's not doing that, so it's not considered consecrated. Teko will also leave that unresolved. Okay, and if you say it has to be on the bottom of the vessel, what if you turn the vessel upside down and you stick it to the bottom, but upwards? You stick it upwards and it's sticky, so it stays upside down on the bottom of the vessel. Is that called, well, it's resting on the bottom of the vessel? So that's okay. Or do you have to do it in the normal way, and with the vessel right side up? This question also is left standing. The next Mishnah teaches, how does he do the kemitza? He extends his fingers onto the palm of his hands. He goes in and he gets it and he closes his hand, and now he did the kemitza. Now, next subject, riba shamna, chisar shamna, chisar lebonata pesula. One has to have the proper ratio of all of the ingredients. For every asiri ta'efa of flour, you need 1 log of oil. We're talking about for most korban minchas that require oil, not the minchat choteh that doesn't require oil. But if it does, then that's it. 1 asirit for 1 log. And you need also a handful, a kometz, of levona. If you put too much oil or too little oil, or you have too little of the levona, then it's no good. What's an example of adding more oil? Well, you're going to say more than a log. It seems like a simple thing. But the challenge is, if you just put random oil in it, so then that would just be extraneous matter. It wouldn't necessarily make it invalid. Only if it's oil that was consecrated for this korban mincha, and you put more than the amount, as we'll see. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, kigon shefrish la shene lugin. Rabbi Eliezer says, what does it mean when you say in the Mishnah that he put too much oil? That he separated 2 log of oil instead of just 1, and he mixed it in. So he designated this oil for this korban mincha and mixed it in, so he used too much. That's what riba means. But it sounds like it's only pasul if he used oil that was designated for this. If it's an outside oil, like cholin oil, he mixed it in, so it's just extraneous matter that got mixed in like a pebble, and maybe that would not make it invalid. So that's what we ask. How come the Rabbi Eliezer says it has to be a case where you designated this oil for this korban mincha? Why not say it's a case where you added in cholin oil that was not consecrated, or oil that was consecrated for a different korban mincha, and you added it in over here? Would the Rabbi Eliezer think that does not make it invalid? We just consider that extraneous material that's not part of the mincha, even though it happens to be mixed in, and so it's not invalid? If you say, yes, indeed, according to Rabbi Eliezer, cholin oil or oil from another korban mincha, consecrated for another korban mincha that got mixed in, will not make it pasul. So you have, as long as you have the proper ratio, asirit and log oil for this mincha, then other oil that came in from elsewhere is only extraneous and maybe does not make it pasul. If you say that, Matkif ladav zutra bar tuvia, ele me'ata minchat chotet pasal bashemen, hechi mashkachat la. But Rav Zutra bar Tuvia challenges this. According to that, a minchat choteh, which has only flour and no oil, how could you ever have a case where there be a minchat choteh that becomes invalid because of a wrong amount of oil? How could it be? Idida haletla. If it's oil that was consecrated for the minchat choteh, there is no oil consecrated for minchat choteh, so it doesn't make any sense. If it's oil that's chulin or from a different mincha, korban mincha, then you just said that those two are considered extraneous material and they do not make it invalid. And if you say, oh, you designated oil for this minchat choteh, no, but since it doesn't require oil, so then that designation doesn't do anything. I consecrate this oil for my minchat choteh. Those words are meaningless. It doesn't become consecrated because there is no oil for it. And therefore, there would never be a possibility of oil that's mixed in with the minchat choteh that would make it pasul. But there should be a way for this pasul to apply also to a minchat choteh. And we answer this question to say, in fact, Rabbi Eliezer agrees that chulin and dechabarte also make it pasul. And he was using a style of, and it's not necessary to say this, as follows. Lami baya de chulin dechabarte de pasil, aval ifrish la shne lugin ho'il v'hai chazila v'hai chazile, ema la lifsil, kamashma lan. I don't need to even tell you that if it's oil that's cholin, or oil that was consecrated for a different korban mincha, and it got mixed up with this one, and added more oil to it, then of course that's pasul. The only question you might have, a more difficult case is, if I designated 2 lugin of oil for this particular korban mincha, since this one is fit for it, and the other one is also fit for it, either one by themselves might be fit for it. Maybe I designated one, I forgot I designated another one, so each of them by themselves are fit for it. I might think that if I add them both together, it would not be invalid. That's why I'm going to teach you this chidush, that even in that case it's invalid. For sure, if it was oil that was not designated for this korban mincha, then I don't even need to tell you that case is pasul. Has Rabbi Eliezer know this? Amar Rava matnitin keshiteh. So accepting that this chidush of Rabbi Eliezer, as talking about, was consecrated for this particular one, what brought him to give this interpretation of the Mishnah? And the answer is the Mishnah's language is difficult. Why did it say riba shamna? It should have said riba la shemen. He put more oil. He put too much oil. Why does it say riba shamna? Its oil became increased. What do you mean its oil? It must be El HaKamashman is coming to teach us Dafagav Deifrish La Shenei Lugin, even though you designated 2 lugin for this particular Korban Mincha, and you might think, well, then it's okay. Even in that case, it becomes invalid. Chiser Levonata, the Mishnah taught that if you're missing some of the measurement of the Levona, then also the Korban Mincha is invalid. Tenor Banan. Chasra v'amda al koret ehad pesula al shne keratin kesherat divrei Rabbi Yehuda. We're going to see there's 3 different opinions about how much has to be missing in order to be invalid. The first opinion is that of Rabbi Yehuda. He says that if it goes down, the proper amount, the full amount, is a handful, a kimitza of levona. If it goes down to 1 koret, 1 pinch, that's no good. If there's 2 pinches, that's okay. So that's the minimum. Is if it goes down to 2 pinches, Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbi Shimon omer al koret ehad keshera pachot mikan pesula. Rabbi Shimon is the most lenient. He says it can even go down to 1 pinch. That's okay. Less than that is no good. We ask, Vehatanya, Rabbi Shimon omer komes ulbona shechasar kolshu pasul. Wait a second. Rabbi Shimon said that 1 koret is okay, but Rabbi Shimon in a different braita says kometz. That's the kemitza of the flour, and levona, that is missing anything at all, is no good. So it has to be a full handful. So this contradicts Rabbi Shimon over there. Teneh koret ulbona shechasar kol shu pasu. We have 2 answers. Either we change the language of this baraita, not kometz and levona, but rather koret levona. All you need is 1 pinch. If the pinch is less, even a tiny bit, then it's no good. But the minimum is a koret, so that's the same as what he said before. Or another answer, the first statement is when you have a lebona that comes as an accompaniment with a flour offering. However, The second baraita is talking about levona that comes by itself. If someone makes a vow, I'm going to donate a kometz of levona, then he has to have a full amount of levona, and it's not sufficient to have just a pinch. So this baraita is talking about a different case. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, shalosh machlokot bedavar. So far we saw two opinions, but actually Rabbi Yochanan teaches that there are three opinions. Rabbi Meir savar kometz b'techila v'kometz basof. Rabbi Meir is the most stringent. He said you need a handful at the beginning, you have to start off with that, and you need a handful at the end. From beginning to end, you need the whole handful, and if anything goes missing at all, it's no good. Rabbi Yehuda says you have to start off with the kometz, but if some goes missing, as long as you have two pinches left at the end, that's enough. Rabbi Shimon sabar kometz b'techila v'kodet ehad basof. Rabbi Shimon agrees that at the beginning you have to start off with the right amount, a full handful, but as long as you have just one kodet at the end, that's all you need. They all derive their opinions from different interpretation of the same pasuk that says "Vet kol halebona asher al mincha." It says all of the levona. When we say all, what does that mean? All that is accompaniment. That is an accompaniment with the mincha. It literally goes on top of the mincha when you put it in the bowl. Rabbi Meir sabar ad ita la lebona. Rabbi Meir says simply, kol means literally, all of it. It's only valid if you have the levona that was originally set aside for it, established with it, then it's still there at the end. So you need all of it. Okay, so that's simple. That means kol. Rabbi Yehuda bar kol v'afilu had koret. Yehuda says no. It says all. It doesn't mean all meaning entire chometz, but all meaning a full pinch. But that's all you need is one pinch. That's if you only have the word kol. Et lerabot koret acher. But the word et comes to include a second one. That's what Rabbi Yehuda said. You need two pinches. But Rabbi Shimon et lo darish. Rabbi Shimon does not derive anything from the extra word et. You just need that for the regular grammar, and therefore the word kol comes to say a full kodet, but that's all you need is one pinch is enough. V'amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, machloket belibona haba'a im hamincha, aval belibona haba'a bifnei asma divrei kol kometz betechila v'kometz basof. Rabbi Yochanan says this machloket that we just said is only regarding levona that comes as an accompaniment with a korban mincha. But if you bring a levona by itself, everybody agrees that you need the full kometz from beginning and to end, which we saw according to the Rabbi Shimon already in the second answer we gave here to reconcile these two views. So everybody agrees in that case. And that's why we need the words asher ala mincha in this pasuk. Kol halebona. When do you need kol halebona? When it's together with the mincha. Then, according to the second two opinions, kol means even the smaller amount. Yeah, that's true when it's with the mincha. But if it's not with the mincha and you're donating just the frankincense, then you need a full amount from beginning to end. ואמר רבי יצחק בר יוסף אמר רבי יוחנן מחלוקת בלבונה הבאה עם המנחה ובלבונה הבאה בזיכין דיברה כל שני כמעשים בתחילה ושני כמעשים בסוף. Rabbi Yochanan further says that the machloket between those three Tanaim is only, again, with a levona that comes as an accompaniment with a korban mincha, but levona that comes in the bowls or the spoons that come with the lechem apanim. There, everybody agrees you need a full amount from beginning. Shte kemasim, you need two kemasim, one in each bowl at the beginning, and you need two kemasim, one in each bowl at the end. It cannot be lacking anything. We ask, Beshita, isn't that obvious? It's not coming with the korban mincha, so isn't that obvious that it has to be a full amount? The pasuk doesn't say that pasuk. Was talking about asher ala mincha, and this is not coming with a regular korban mincha. So isn't that normal? Isn't that obvious? Actually, I might have thought that since it comes together with the lechem apanim, so I might think that that's kind of like a katoret that is brought in a bowl with the regular korban mincha. That it's the same thing, since this comes together with the lechem apanim. That's the same law as asher mincha, and you could even go have less. And therefore, Rabbi Yochanan want to teach us not so, that everybody agrees for lechem apanim is a different law, and the levona has to be a full amount. Peligi ba Rabbi Amev Rabbi Yitzchak Napacha. Chadam al machloket bilbona ba'amincha, aval bilbona ba'bifnei atzma, dibra kol kometz b'techila v'kometz basof. Rabbi Amev Rabbi Yitzchak Napacha argue about that point that we made from Rabbi Yochanan. One of them agrees with Rabbi Yochanan and said that the machloket is regarding levona that comes together with the mincha. There, according to two of the opinions, it says you can even end up with less than a full kometz. But if it comes by itself, the levona, then everybody agrees you need the full amount from beginning to end. That's one opinion, the same as Rabbi Yochanan. But there's another opinion. V'chad amar kemachloket bazo, kach machloket bazo. The opinion says that the machloket in this case, in this one case, is the same as the machloket in the other case. And Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon would say also in a koret that is brought by itself, if it goes lacking and you have at least one pinch or two pinches, according to Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda, respectively, then that would still be valid. Chisa levonata, the Mishnah mentioned that if the amount of levona decreases, then the korban is invalid. Curiously, though, it does not say that if it increases, that they put too much levona, then it's invalid, as it did regarding oil. For oil, it said if it's too much or too little, then it's invalid. But for levona, it only said too little. Hayatir keshara, so we can infer from this that if there was extra levona, then it's okay. V'atanya yatir pesula, but there's a braita that says for levona also, if there's too much, then the korban mincha is invalid. How can we reconcile the Mishnah, the implication from the Mishnah with the Baraita? Amar Rami bar Chama kegon shefrish la shnei kemasim. So it depends how much it's more. If he put double, he separated 2 handfuls of frankincense for one single mincha offering, then that is way too much, and that's pesula. But if it's only a little bit more, then it's still valid. After all, people's hands are bigger and smaller, so you can't say a precise exact amount. And so if it's somewhat more, that's okay. But if it's 2 amounts more, double, then it's no good. Rami bar Chama further said, he already gave this answer, that if someone did separate 2 kematzim and one of them gets lost, is that okay? What happens? Depends when. If one gets lost before the kemitza, then they were not established. So that's okay. As you got 2 of them, but one was lost, and then you did the kemitza. So really, it's like nothing happened. You had 2, then you had 1, but at the time of kemitza, you had 1, so that's totally fine. But you separated 2, and then you did kemitza. So now at the time of kemitza, there's too many. Well, then it's invalid, because both of those handfuls were fixed, were established for this mincha offering, and that's called too many. Rami bar Chama says the same law, same concept regarding lechem apanim. For lechem apanim, the frankincense, first of all, is double. It's two bowls of frankincense, and second of all, the kimitza is done by taking the frankincense. Unlike with most korban mincha offerings, you have the frankincense in there in the bowl, but the kimitza is of flour. But here, the equivalent of kimitza is taking the frankincense that's there. So if he designated 4 bowls, 4 of arba kematzin, 4 bowls of handfuls of frankincense, 4 of the 2 spoonfuls, so you really only need 2, but now you had 4, but then 2 of the 4 went missing, and now you have 2 left, which is the right amount. So it depends when. If it's before the bazichin were taken off the table, so then you had 4, but 2 were lost. So now you have 2, that's the right amount. And those 4 were not all established, and so you had 4, then you had 2, and at the time that you do the equivalent to kemisah, meaning taking off the bazichin, is totally fine, so good. But if you had 4, and then you did the bazichin, and only after that they got lost, so those all 4 were already established for this korban mincha, and then that's already no good, that's called too many. We ask, why did Rami bar Chama have to teach us the same principle regarding regular korban mincha and also the lechem apanim? מהודתמה כיוון דבריר קומץ דידה, כיוון שהגיע זמנה לפורקה, כיוון דפריקה דמיה, כמשמע לן. Because I might have thought that since, unlike with the regular korban mincha, you have all the flour that's in that big bowl. And then, so it's not clear which flour the Kohen is going to take as the kometz. He might take from here, might take from there. So it's not separated yet. However, that's not true regarding the lechem apanim, where the equivalent of kmitza is the taking of the bazichin, which are already clearly designated. There are no other. You're just taking those. So since they are pre-designated, and once the time comes to take them at around noon of the day of Shabbat, it's as if they're already taken. So therefore, I might have thought that even if they get lost before the time, so I had 4 and they got lost before I actually took the bazichin, maybe it will still be not good because it's already pre-designated. So Kamash Malan, that's why he teaches us not so. As long as they got lost before he actually takes the bazichin off, that's okay. They got lost, so we don't consider them to be anything. And now you have just the 2, the proper 2. But if they get lost after he takes the bazichin, then you had 4 of them at that time. Well, that's too many, and in that case, it would be invalid. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen v'Amen.